student's loan history, the student's Pell Grant history, the student's enrollment history. A lot of information is checked through NSLDS, through the database matching with that done. There's also a drug abuse hold file that's checked through the Department of Justice to see if a student is ineligible for any prior drug convictions. There's a verification hold file that's placed on the CPS level. It's the verification hold file is actually not a database check, but CPS is where students' spouses are selected for verification for other items. And I won't go into verification today. There's a whole Pandora's box, for lack of a better term, of verification things to do with. But that is just so you know, that's where the verification is initiated. And the Department of Defense is one of the last database matches to check and see if the student is a child of a service member who was killed in action or died as a result of service. And those students may be eligible for the Iraq and Afghanistan service grant. So there's that database match there too. Next, we'll just go through all of these little database matches and see what the documentation requirements are if the match is not successful. So the Social Security number, this is really the biggest one again, where the student's Social Security number and date of birth have to be verified through CPS and the Social Security Administration. If the match doesn't confirm a correct Social Security number for the student, we have two options. We can have the student complete the FAFSA again using the right Social Security number. A lot of the time that's what happens. If a student, if their Social Security number doesn't match SSA, then the student's transposed one or two numbers and left a number off or done something weird. It's not usually that they've used someone else's social. It's usually that they've accidentally typed in their Social Security number incorrectly. So we have two options: either to log into CPS and correct the social for the student, or to have the student complete a new FAFSA. And if there really isn't any downside to having the student complete the FAFSA again, that's what I would recommend doing, because it prevents a lot of headache on the financial aid office. If we know that the FAFSA we're using has the right social, it will prevent future mismatches with that Social Security number. If you just go back in and change or correct the Social Security number on the original application, it will still have the same SAR ID, and it still might cause some confusion down the road. But that's pretty much all there is about Social Security numbers for students anyway. Also, we need to verify the parent Social Security numbers on the FAFSA. Did you have a question?
Yeah, that's actually, you just said that, because I just had a incident where the student was from another country, and her parents actually still live there, and she lives here with the guardian because they're not a legal guardian.
Okay.
And her parents don't have socials. So she was told, because she's at a community college now, and she was getting ready to go to four-year college, and they told her that she could put all zeros for her parents' social. Now, is that correct?
That is correct. If the parents don't have Social Security numbers, on the FAFSA it says don't leave it blank, or don't put in a bogus number, just put all zeros for the parents who don't have a Social Security number.
And they still call us off the way.
Well, the student should have a Social Security number. That's really the main thing. As long as the student has a Social Security number, that would be the requirement. So with parent Social Security numbers, if they do enter a social, or one or if both parents enter their Social Security numbers on the FAFSA, we'd like to have at least one of those match on the database, or the CPS to SSA database match. It's best to have both of them match. If one is not matching and one is matching, that might cause some confusion, but it's recommended that we match as much information as we can. Be as accurate as we can with those Social Security numbers. The Social Security Administration also verifies citizenship for students who indicated they're citizens. And so, once again, the requirement for Title IV-8 is that a student is either a U.S. citizen or U.S. national. U.S. permanent resident or other eligible non-citizen. Also, students in the or citizens of the freely associated states listed there are eligible for certain Title IV programs. And so that U.S. citizenship is verified through the SSA. So if the student indicates he or she is a citizen on the FAFSA and that match fails, there might be a couple of things that are going on. Maybe the student accidentally put that he's a citizen, but he's actually not a citizen. If he's an eligible non-citizen, then you want to go back to the FAFSA and fix that answer to eligible non-citizen. Provide the alien registration number, and you submit that FAFSA for processing. If the student is a citizen and the citizenship match fails, then the student has to provide documentation proving that he or she is a citizen. And so there are a few things that can prove U.S. citizenship. A U.S. passport would work, or a passport card. It doesn't have to be current. It could be an expired passport, because only U.S. citizens should be able to obtain a U.S. passport. Copy of a birth certificate would do the trick as long as the student, or as long as the certificate shows the student was born in the U.S. Everyone born in the U.S. is considered a U.S. citizen. Certificate of naturalization would be for students who have come to the U.S. and become citizens, naturalized. And there are other things that provide U.S. citizenship. There's a list in the FSA handbook. I guess if you're born to foreign diplomats in a foreign country, but they're both U.S. citizens, then you could be considered to be a citizen yourself. But there's the complete list is in the handbook. And regardless of the type of documentation you collect for citizenship, we have to obtain the originals. So we can't take a copy of a birth certificate, or a student can't come in with a copy of their birth certificate that shows they were born in the U.S. It actually has to be the original birth certificate, and we would make a copy for our own records. We wouldn't be able to take a copy of a passport. We need to see the passport on our desks and then make a copy of that for our own records. So that's just something to keep in mind. So eligible non-citizens, we're out of the realm of talking about citizens, but students who are eligible non-citizens, permanent residents would be eligible for Title IV aid, and also individuals in these circumstances here with the right documentation. So we have persons granted asylum in the U.S., refugees, lawful permanent residents again, conditional entrance, persons paroled in the U.S. for at least 1 year, and Cuban Haitian entrants. There are also a couple more. Victims of human trafficking would be eligible for Title IV aid if they had documentation with the Health and Human Services explaining their situation. And also battered immigrants and their qualified dependents. So with battered immigrants, this stipulation would be if a wife is not a citizen herself, but her spouse, her husband is a citizen, and she's abused by her husband and leaves the house to escape that situation, files a claim with the Violence Against Women Act, she would become eligible for Title IV aid even though she's not a U.S. citizen, and her dependents, her children, would also become eligible for Title IV aid in that circumstance. So to confirm the eligibility for eligible non-citizens, there are 3 steps. Even though it says primary and secondary, there's actually a third step in there. It's also called the secondary. So it's like primary, secondary 1, and secondary 2 steps. The primary confirmation is simply the database match between CPS and the Department of Homeland Security. If that is verified, there's no issues to resolve. The secondary confirmation would come from the CPS. Again, there's an automated secondary confirmation. If the first one doesn't go through, they just try again. And that automated secondary confirmation would give you a new FAFSA, a new ICER, within about a week and a half or so to get the result of the DHS's findings, that secondary confirmation. The school can also initiate a secondary confirmation on their own if they think the student didn't fill out the FAFSA correctly, or if they have conflicting information in their office, they can initiate a secondary confirmation too. And when the automated secondary confirmation comes back from the Department of Education, if it's still not resolved, we have to go the paper or manual secondary confirmation route. I think that is the third option. The trying yet again to verify the student's eligibility. So with that automated secondary, the first secondary confirmation comes back from the Department of Homeland Security with these three codes. And the only really good code here is Y. Everything else tells us that they couldn't verify anything quite yet, or they couldn't verify anything for the student being eligible. So once that does come back with anything but Y, we would initiate that paper/manual secondary confirmation, or the third step, using a form. Has anyone ever dealt with a situation where you would need to verify students' eligible non-citizen status? There's a specific form. It's called the form. Oh, Sean has.
No, I was just gonna tell you, there's a copy of the form in the back of that section in the binder. If you
Okay.
actually look in the binder, there is a copy, I believe it's the very last thing on the in the back section.
Okay. Great. Well, what you should find back there is a form G845.
Look in section 4, Sorry, Dana.
No, you're good. Thanks for letting us know. So form G845 is the paper/manual secondary confirmation paperwork to verify students' eligibility for Title IV aid if they're eligible non-citizens. This form is actually a form that's sent out to Citizenship and Immigration Services to verify students' eligibility for a number of programs, but we use it in financial aid